Good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Amy, and I work at the United Way of Olmsted County as the Outreach Coordinator. Our agency unites people in our community to the resources that they need in the realms of education, financial stability, and health. And we really believe that those three things are the building blocks to a quality life. Now, we need you, we need the audience to give, advocate, and volunteer to make this work possible. So we provide these quarterly Partners in Pastries events to really advocate for your community, to learn about what initiatives are going on and how you can get involved. So that is why I'm pleased to announce that we have Cradle to Career here with us today. Julie and Claudia are our friends and partners, and they're going to share more about their initiative and what it's all about. So without further ado, I'm gonna hop right into our first question. So in the third quarter of each year, United Way really focuses on childhood success. I invite the audience to take a moment and type into the comments, what is quality inclusive education? What does quality and inclusive education mean to you? So think about that and share with us below. Julie, this one's for you. What is the mission of Cradle to Career?
Thanks, Amy, and thanks for having us here today. We're so excited to be a partner with United Way. We cannot do this work without United Way's support and contributions to us. So thank you to United Way, and also thank you to the donors and volunteers and supporters of United Way. Because of your actions, initiatives like Cradle to Career can happen. So our mission at Cradle to Career is to ensure that all children and youth in Rochester, Minnesota succeed Cradle to Career. And we do that work through a shared purpose, alignment, and accountability among community partners. So this is a community-wide and community-owned initiative working to eliminate education disparities, eliminate racial disparities, and to ensure that all children are given an opportunity to have a quality educational experience.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, Julie, really is a collective impact approach. And this type of work is new in Rochester when we talk about addressing education gaps collectively. Can you share more about how and why Cradle to Career emerged?
Absolutely. So it actually started in 2016 with a question from Rotary, led by Elaine Case. She wanted to understand what Rotary's education investments looked like and what were the outcomes of that across our community. In a short research time, she recognized that there wasn't a great answer. So she actually partnered, so Rotary partnered with United Way to write a grant, and they started to research other opportunities or other ways that communities are addressing educational disparities. Because unfortunately, Minnesota has persistent education gaps that have been there for decades. So in their research, we came across a model called Strive Together. So Strive Together is a national nonprofit, and they have nearly 70 communities doing this kind of work across the community, across the nation. So this kind of work is collective impact. Essentially what that means is that we have a network of partners that come together and they align their programs and they align their data to a shared outcome or a shared result. And this model really caught the eye of United Way and Rotary because data was such an important part here. So fast forward to spring of 2017, and the CEO of Strive Together came for a big community meeting. We had a data walk, which essentially means that we put all the data for our 7 different outcomes along the wall, and people were checking it out and really getting framed in what our local context is. And what does that mean? The local context is our local story. So what's the story of our 3rd graders? What's the story of our kindergartners? What's the story of birth to 3? And the community was, I think, a little bit shocked because our story wasn't great and it was tracking with the nation's education disparities. And we know that Minnesota, for racial disparities, is worse in the nation. The only state worse than us is Wisconsin, our neighbors, which I think was shocking for people. And so, the CEO of Strive Together said so many communities are like program rich, but systems poor. And what that means is we have a whole bunch of people doing great work, but we don't necessarily know what the outcome is. And that's what Rotary was after. Like, how do we know all of these efforts are doing anything? And so fast forward to 2018, February 2018, Elaine, as our chair, presented this 44-page blueprint that the community leaders have put together, 50 of them on this planning team. And she said, okay, community, are we ready to do this? And the community said yes. So fast forward to September 2018, Cradle to Career hired their first employee. And now we're a mighty team of 3.5. So weird to talk about a person and a half, but and then we have just the community giving of their time and their efforts to make sure that we make sure that all kindergartners are ready to succeed in kindergarten, and that all of our high school graduates graduate ready for their next step. And those are 2 open networks. That was a long answer, Amy.
Wow, that's an incredible story though, Julie. I cannot believe that it was only 2017 when all this came to be. It just feels like you've been so critical during COVID response, but just in general to the community and creating that alignment between partners. So something that United Way really strives for as well, working together. Claudia, I'm going to turn it to you next. How does Cradle to Career use community engagement and advocacy as levers to improve education in our community?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for having us here, as Julie said. Community-wide, community-owned initiative. And I think that is the key to the community engagement piece that you're asking about. We really can't do anything without the community. We strive to get directly from parents and students what they want, what they need, so we can create strategies and design plans and actions around really those needs. We don't want to guess what our parents or our youth want. We want to hear it from them. So that's a great part of our community engagement. That's one piece. And the other piece is engaging these organizations that form our network to align and create resources that then are brought back to parents and students. A couple of examples are, for example, in the high school graduation network. Before the pandemic, when the network was designing their strategy and their action plan for the year, we had 2 student voice events where we asked them what was important for them in the adults that they interact with. So we know what qualities they're looking for in those adults. And with parents, we are designing kindergarten readiness cards for little ones. And we have brought those cards as piloted with groups of parents because we want to learn from them. Are these really what you need? Would you really use them? Are these resources that you would find useful and effective? So we can then modify and adapt to have a product that is useful and is what they really want and need.
Incredible. So those cards then I hear are launching soon, which is an exciting thing. Julie, can you speak a little bit more about advocacy when we think about policy, but also other ways to advocate?
Absolutely. I think that is also a differentiator of Cradle to Career from any other initiative, educational initiative, is that we are aiming for systems transformation. We recognize that putting the ownership of 3rd grade reading on a child is not appropriate. It is about the systems in which that child interacts to make sure that that system is ready to receive that child and has the resources that they need individually in order to be successful in school. So what does that mean? That means that at the policy level, there may be policies that are not serving our Black and our Latinx students, as well as they're serving potentially white or another student. And so when we advocate, we are advocating at the local level, which means like parents, informing us what are the barriers that they see to educational success, which is one of the things that we learned in COVID, is that our parents felt very ill prepared to be at home as a co-teacher as their students were doing distance learning. And so we quickly responded with our Support Your Local Learner campaign. And if you go on our website, you can see that we have resources for parents so that they understand what standards, educational standards their students are working on in order to help them be successful. And that's a systems level change, right? That essentially what we're asking for is we're asking for parents to be able to be informed, not at the same level as a professionally trained educator, but at least have a peek behind the curtain so that they can help their kids. And so when we talk about advocating, that's the sort of advocating that we're saying is parents, you have a voice, please use it, advocate for your children's needs. Our community has a voice, and through data, if we're finding that there are policies that aren't working for our children, can we collectively come together and advocate for change? What does that look like? And then we also advocate at the state level. We have 6 Cradle to Career communities across the state and 2 Promise neighborhoods who make our, statewide association called Education Partnership Coalition. And we do advocate at the state level, not only for policy level, but also for funding, to fund initiatives like this so that we can continue to collect the data and align our programmatic partners. I will tell you, it's transformational when you have 16 organizations pulling all of their resources to provide us a local context of our kids. There is something really personal and powerful in that. And that's the story that we tell, to say, no, we know our local context and we know what's working and what's not. And so when we advocate, we're advocating at all 3 of those different levels.
I love that you keep using the word story. That just really resonates with us. We want to be telling the correct story, an accurate story, but also intertwining that data. And you can only get that through initiatives like Cradle to Career and going to the source. Kind of hitting on that data point again, we always, as United Way, turn over to Cradle to Career and your collaborative action networks, CANs for short, to get that reliable local data. Can you explain more about what data alignment across these partners does for students, how it impacts our early learners in our community in Rochester?
Sure, and I'm going to take a high level viewpoint, and then I'll let Claudia talk really about what it looks like in action in the networks. So high level, Cradle to Career has 7 different outcomes that we are measuring. So we have a 0 to 3 network that's not open yet. And then our result, let me back up. When we talk about data, we talk about data through a results-based accountability framework. And in this framework, there's 2 levels in the conversation. The first conversation is a population level or community-wide level. That is outcomes that no one organization could ever fully own. So for example, let's say on kindergartners, right? So Rochester Public Schools is one of our biggest partners in the kindergarten network because they cover quite a few kindergartners, but they don't have all of them because we have other schools and other educational settings kids are in leading up to kindergarten, or some of our kindergartners are in private schools, or they're in home schools, or they're in smaller charter schools. So that's the point, is like at the population level, even your biggest partner can't own that entire outcome because it takes all the partners working together to make up that outcome. And so the other level that we talk about is the program level or the organization level. So that means that's a contributing factor to that overall population. So for example, we have 16 different partners in our kindergarten readiness network. Claudia, I might be off on my number, you can correct me. But all of them are then contributing their data and their program to align up to this bigger community-wide. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about data. We talk about it in a results-based accountability framework. And really, we hit on the fact that nobody can do this alone. Even the biggest partners cannot do this alone. It takes everyone. And there is no too small partner. You know, if we have a in-home daycare and they have 2 kids that they're working reading strategies on or social emotional learning on, we're like, come, contribute your data, because that tells us a better, richer story of what's really happening. And then we can use that data to learn from what we call bright spots. You know, if there's something in the data that's like, whoa, how does your program get, 80% of your kids to show up during digital times when nobody else has got that? What is it? What's happening there? And Claudia will have plenty of cool stories like that where we're like, oh, and it breaks assumptions. And I think that's why we love data so much, is that we make all sorts of assumptions and then we get into data, we're like, oh, well, that's not at all what we expected. And so it's really, that's why I love data. I could go on and on, but Claudia really should talk.
So as Julie said, again, one recurring theme that we hear and we're going to keep on hearing is the community, community, community. Nobody can do this alone, not even the biggest partner. And one of the things we see is how these measures that we are taking across the community not only tell a story, but inform next steps for us. So for example, the Kindergartner Readiness Network, they are looking at assessments that are done throughout the year. And some of them were done in the beginning of the year, and we're pulling the data from the end of the year. And that would allow us to see growth. How are children growing through their 3 and 4 year old periods? And then that will inform us which areas that we could focus on our next intervention, just like we have the cards right now that cover all of the areas. If we notice that our kids in this sample, because again, it's not all the kids in Rochester that we are able to reach, but we can assume that if we find an area that is lower or higher, we can look at the bright spot. What is that organization doing that is going so well, and learn from them? And if we find that in an area that says our children are not moving as we expected them to move, we can then generate interventions that go across the community to reinforce growth in that area. So we can make sure, for example, all our kids are entering kindergarten are their best, are their most ready to learn, and social emotional abilities are growing and they're strong. So that data allows us to tell a compelling story, tell how our community is doing, and also inform decisions and next steps for our networks.
And I was really surprised to learn that we didn't even have a definition for kindergarten readiness. And that seems like a critical step to be on the same page about. So Claudia, the Kindergarten Readiness Network, I just know has done so much work around that. Would you care to talk about that a bit?
Yes, so there is no formal definition across the state. Minnesota, the Department of Education of Minnesota deems a child ready for kindergarten when they are 5 years old and they have had their early childhood screening or something like that, and that's it. And then they go and suggest a list of things that would be good to have, but there's no definition. So the network came together and created, it's kind of like a technical definition for the network, and it's full of big words. And the process that we're doing right now is, again, community input. We want parents to tell us what's important for them. So we're bringing this definition to groups of parents, and through facilitated discussion, we're learning from them what it means for a child to be kindergarten ready. So we want to have a community-wide definition that, again, is with the community, for the community, not only a technical one for internal processes, but one that reflects what our community wants and needs.
Totally. And then if someone's child goes to Boys and Girls Club after school, or if they go to Families First, they're going to get a similar story or a similar experience. So that's amazing work. We're already to our last question, ladies. What is one takeaway you want everyone at home to know about Cradle to Career? And I'm going to hop over to Julie first.
Um, Gosh, one takeaway. I think the biggest thing to know is that we are different from other initiatives in the fact that we have what we call backbone staff, right? So this mighty team of 3.5, our job is to monitor those results and to ensure that we as a community are moving forward. And that's what a differentiator is that this isn't, this is volunteer led. We do have conveners of Families First who is leading the work of Kindergarten Readiness and Boys and Girls Club who are leading the work of High School Network. But 16 and 18 organizations, I think, are coming together voluntarily to align their data. And we work to support those network partners. So that's what's really a differentiator, is that we have people our dedicated job is to make sure that Cradle to Career, this community-wide, community-owned initiative, is successful. So that's a differentiator. Another thing is when we talk about data, we remind ourselves every day that a data point represents a beating heart. So this isn't about treating, data as if it is, so much more than a human. It's not. Data is the human. And it tells us the real story. And so when you see those gaps, when you see that, 70% of our Latinx kids are graduating with their 4-year cohort, that means 30% are not. And so where are they and why not? And what is the story? And how can we reach them? How do we make sure that they are graduating at the same rate as anyone else, right? We want all children to graduate. And that's why this policy work is so important. And it's why advocacy work is so important. And it's why alignment of data is so important, because we will not change decades and decades of educational gaps overnight. It takes a collective effort, and it takes time and trust and commitment to those data hearts. That's why I'm going to call them from now on data hearts.
So I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm probably sounding like a broken record here, because one takeaway for me is community. This is a community-owned, community-wide initiative, and it doesn't just mean the community of nonprofits or the community of education. It means really the whole community. We all touch a child's life, even if we don't have kids. You go to Hy-Vee and you interact with teens that are working behind the register. So how we make sure those interactions have a positive impact on kids? How do we make sure that when you go to the park and you find it's those little interactions, it's the community that we live on. So it's from learning from our community wants and needs early in the process in 2016, 2017, to nowadays, learning what parents of kindergartner or pre-K kids need and want for their kids and what it means to have the kids ready, to the high school graduation network. What does it mean for kids? Why are they not graduating? How can we impact them in situations that are outside the learning environment? How do we get the whole community to work together? How do our partners are aligning their resources? How even if you think you're not involved in education, what's your role in our community to make it a better place for everyone, to make it a more equitable place for our youth? So it's this concept of we together are way better, and we're better poised to do great things for our own community. So my takeaway is community, and the importance of being united, working towards the betterment of our own kids and our own youth, our own people that we are here and for them and with them.
Wow, you both gave me chills. Community-led and data as beating hearts. Those are some good takeaways. So what can you do to learn more? Head over to c2cmn.com to check out this initiative. And then if you also want to stay tuned for more Partners in Pastries, you can find those at our YouTube channel at UW Olmsted. And just follow us on social media. Stay connected and share your voice. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Amy.